My name is Jason, and for most of my life, I've chosen the quiet path, the safe route. I avoided conflict like it was a disease, thinking that by doing so, I was being dependable, reliable, even admirable. But what I didn't realize was that in trying to keep everyone else comfortable, I had become invisible, just another shadow blending into the walls. And nothing made me feel more like a ghost than my relationship with Madison. She wasn't just someone who compared me to her ex-boyfriend, Brandon. She turned those comparisons into a public spectacle. Every conversation seemed to circle back to him. Brandon would have handled this better. Or you should see how confident Brandon looked when he did this. At first, I laughed it off, convincing myself it was harmless teasing. But deep down, each comment chipped away at my self-worth until all that remained was doubt. Then came the day she crossed the line I couldn't ignore. Scrolling through social media one evening, I stumbled upon a post from Madison, a picture of Brandon standing confidently against a city skyline. Her caption read, "Some men are born to lead, while others, well, they're still figuring it out." The implication hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just an insult, it was a declaration. To Madison, I wasn't just forgettable. I was irrelevant, a placeholder, a man-shaped void where someone extraordinary used to stand. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I'd let her belittle me without protest. My silence hadn't protected me, it had erased me. But what hurt most wasn't her cruelty. It was the realization that no one stepped in to defend me. Not her friends, not mine. They laughed along, oblivious or perhaps indifferent to the fact that I was drowning in plain sight. Each joke, each comparison felt like another brick added to the wall between who I was and who I wanted to be. For the first time, I began to wonder, was I really as dependable as I thought? Or had I simply allowed myself to become wallpaper, a backdrop for someone else's story? The party was supposed to be a chance for me to finally integrate into Madison's world, to prove that I wasn't just the quiet guy who blended into the background. But as the evening wore on, it became painfully clear that I wasn't there as her partner. I was there as her prop, a living comparison to the man she couldn't stop talking about. The tension escalated when one of Madison's friends, Sarah, innocently asked me about my hobbies. It seemed like a harmless question, an attempt to include me in the conversation. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could utter a word, Madison jumped in with a laugh that felt more like a dagger. "Oh, he doesn't have any special hobbies," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Jason's more like an empty wall. You know, something you don't notice unless you're staring at it." The group erupted into laughter, their amusement echoing in my ears like a cruel soundtrack to my humiliation. I forced a tight smile, pretending it didn't sting, but inside, I felt myself shrinking further into invisibility. Every laugh was a brick added to the wall between me and the person I wanted to be. What made it worse was the realization that this wasn't just casual cruelty, it was calculated. Madison wasn't simply making jokes. She was orchestrating a performance, turning me into a character in her play, a forgettable extra in a story where she was the star. As the night dragged on, I began to feel like I was trapped in a theater production I hadn't auditioned for. Madison was the director, calling all the shots, while I stood off stage, waiting for cues I never understood. Each comment she made was another line in her script, designed to remind everyone, including me, that I wasn't enough. Her words weren't just cutting, they were suffocating, wrapping around me like chains that kept me tethered to her narrative. But what truly broke me was the way no one stepped in, not even Sarah, who had innocently sparked the conversation. They laughed along, oblivious or indifferent, leaving me to drown in the weight of Madison's words. For the first time, I saw the truth clearly. I wasn't part of their circle. I was merely a shadow cast by Brandon's towering presence, a placeholder for someone Madison deemed worthy. And in that moment, I realized something even more devastating. I had allowed it. I had let her rewrite my story, turning me into someone I didn't recognize. I wasn't Jason anymore. I was wallpaper Jason, a caricature she had created to make herself feel bigger. As we sat on the bench, the distant hum of laughter from the fire pit fading into the night, Jessica's demeanor shifted. Her calm confidence wavered for just a moment, and I could see something darker lurking beneath the surface. She turned to me, her voice quieter but sharper, like she was finally ready to peel back layers of pain she'd kept hidden for years. You think Madison talks about Brandon like he's some kind of god? She said, almost bitterly. Let me tell you what it's really like living with him. Her words hit me like a freight train as she began recounting not just betrayal, but brutality. He didn't just cheat on me, she said, her hands gripping the edge of the bench. There were nights when his anger would explode over something trivial, a misplaced key, a late dinner, and he'd lose control. Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to continue. I still remember the first time he hit me. It wasn't hard enough to leave a mark that lasted, but it left one inside me. A crack I couldn't fix no matter how much I pretended everything was fine. The air around us seemed heavier now, charged with the weight of her confession. And then there were the lies, she continued, her tone growing colder. He convinced me I couldn't survive without him, that I was too weak, too broken to make it on my own. Every time I tried to leave, he found a way to drag me back, guilt trips, threats, even stealing money out of our joint account until I had nothing left. Her eyes glistened under the dim light, but she blinked away the tears before they fell. But the worst part came next. One day, I realized I was drowning, not just emotionally, but financially. He'd racked up debts in both our names, maxed out credit cards I didn't even know existed. When creditors started calling, I sold everything I owned, my jewelry, my car, even pieces of furniture my grandmother gave me to cover what he owed. And do you know what he said when I begged him to stop? You're lucky I let you stay. Her voice broke at that last sentence, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in her. But it wasn't weakness, it was strength. Strength born out of surviving hell itself. I wanted to say something, anything, to comfort her, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I reached out and placed a hand on hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held onto it like an anchor. That's why I'm done, she said firmly, regaining her composure. I'm done being afraid. Done feeling like I'm not enough. Done letting someone else define who I am. Hearing her speak, I felt a surge of clarity. If Jessica could break free from someone so toxic, then maybe, just maybe I could too. The night had already been a whirlwind of emotions, but the storm truly reached its peak when Madison stumbled upon me and Jessica sitting together in the kitchen. Her eyes widened with disbelief, then narrowed into slits of fury as she processed what she was seeing. Before either of us could say anything, she lunged toward us, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. How dare you? She screamed, her words dripping with venom. You're betraying me right now, Jason? With her? Her gaze darted between Jessica and me, her face flushed red with rage. Before I could respond, Madison grabbed my arm, yanking me with surprising force. Get up, she demanded, her grip tight enough to leave marks. We're leaving. Right now. For a moment I froze, stunned by the sheer audacity of her actions. But something inside me snapped. This wasn't just another one of her manipulative games. This was her attempting to assert control over me in front of everyone. And for the first time, I refused to let her win. I stood up slowly, deliberately prying her fingers off my arm. My voice was calm, but it carried an icy edge that even startled myself. No, I said firmly, locking eyes with her. I've endured enough of your insults, your comparisons, your constant need to belittle me. You don't get to control me anymore. The room seemed to hold its breath as every word hung heavy in the air. Madison stared at me, her mouth agape, as if she couldn't believe I had the audacity to defy her. But her shock quickly turned into uncontrollable anger. With a guttural scream, she grabbed the wine glass from the counter and hurled it against the wall. The shattering sound echoed through the house, silencing every conversation in the room. All eyes turned toward us, their expressions a mix of shock, discomfort, and morbid curiosity. Madison's chest heaved as she glared at me, tears streaming down her face. "You think you're better than me?" She spat, her voice trembling with emotion. "You're nothing without me, Jason. Nothing." Her words might have once cut deep, but now they felt hollow, meaningless. I didn't flinch. Instead, I took a step back, putting distance between us. "Maybe I am nothing to you," I replied, my tone steady. "But at least I'm done pretending to be something I'm not. Goodbye, Madison." As I turned to walk away, I felt a strange sense of liberation, like chains I hadn't even realized where there had finally fallen off. Behind me, Madison collapsed onto the floor, sobbing hysterically while Jessica stood silently, her presence a quiet anchor in the chaos. Walking away from Madison felt like stepping out of a storm, but the aftermath hit me harder than I expected. The days that followed weren't peaceful, they were chaotic, disorienting, and filled with challenges I hadn't anticipated. Losing Madison wasn't just about losing a toxic relationship. It was also losing a sense of stability I clung to for so long. At first, I thought I could handle everything on my own. After all, I had finally reclaimed my dignity, right? But life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. It started small, a missed call from an old friend who suddenly seemed distant. Then another. Whispers began to circulate, and soon enough, I realized Madison wasn't going down without a fight. She spun lies about me, painting me as unreliable, selfish, even manipulative. Jason only used me, she told anyone who would listen. He left because he couldn't handle responsibility. Her words spread like wildfire, twisting the truth until even people close to me began to doubt my character. One by one, friendships I thought were unshakable crumbled under the weight of her deceit. But the real blow came at work. A colleague pulled me aside one afternoon, his expression uneasy. "Listen, Jason, there's been some talk. People are saying you sabotaged team projects before leaving early last month. It's affecting your reputation here." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where these accusations were coming from. Madison had connections more than I cared to admit, and she wasn't above using them to ruin me professionally. Within weeks, I found myself unemployed, struggling to explain gaps in my resume during interviews while carrying the burden of false accusations. Financial strain quickly became unbearable. I couldn't afford rent, let alone groceries or utilities. Pride kept me from asking for help, but desperation forced my hand. I swallowed my ego and reached out to Ryan, an old college buddy I hadn't spoken to in years. To his credit, Ryan didn't hesitate. He welcomed me into his spare room with open arms, no questions asked. For months, I lived off his generosity, sleeping on a lumpy couch and eating meals we stretched thin to make ends meet. Every day felt like a test of resilience, a reminder that I wasn't as independent as I once believed. Yet, despite the humiliation of relying on someone else, those months taught me something invaluable. Vulnerability isn't weakness. Ryan didn't judge me for needing help. Instead, he reminded me that everyone stumbles sometimes. Slowly, I began rebuilding not just my career, but my self-worth. Each rejection email, each awkward conversation with former colleagues, fueled my determination to prove Madison wrong. By the time I secured a new job, I wasn't the same man who walked away from her. I was stronger, sharper, and ready to face whatever came next. It was a chilly evening when I returned home from work, the kind of night where the air feels heavier than usual. I wasn't expecting anyone, least of all Madison, but there she was, sitting on my couch as if she still belonged in my life. Her presence hit me like a freight train, but what caught me off guard were the roses sprawled across my coffee table and a neatly wrapped gift box beside them. For a moment, I just stood frozen in the doorway, staring at this surreal scene. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen, tears streaking down her face. "Jason," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you." She stood abruptly, clutching the bouquet like it was a lifeline. "Please, just hear me out." Her desperation was palpable, almost suffocating. She stepped closer, thrusting the flowers toward me. "I messed up. I know I did. But I didn't realize how much you meant to me until you were gone. You have to believe me, I can change. We can fix this." Her words tumbled out in a frantic rush, each sentence punctuated by sobs. It was hard not to feel a pang of pity, but beneath her tears, I saw something else. Manipulation. This wasn't genuine remorse. It was fear of losing control, fear of being alone. I set my keys down slowly, keeping my tone steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Madison," I said firmly, "you don't get to come here with flowers and gifts and think that erases everything. I spent months feeling like I wasn't enough for you, like I was always second best. How do you expect me to forget that?" Her expression shifted from pleading to panic. "You don't understand," she cried, her voice rising. "I love you. I made mistakes, yes, but isn't that what relationships are about? Working through things together?" She grabbed my arm, her grip tight, almost desperate. "Don't throw us away because of one bad chapter." But I pulled back, my resolve unwavering. "No, Madison. This isn't about one chapter, it's about the entire book. I can't live with someone who always sees me as a loser, who constantly compares me to someone else. I deserve better than that. And so do you." For a brief moment, fury flashed in her eyes. "If you walk away now, I'll make sure you regret it," she hissed, her voice venomous. "Do you really want to deal with lawyers and courtrooms over this?" The threat hung in the air, heavy and menacing, but it only cemented my decision. I met her gaze without flinching. "Go ahead," I said coldly. "But know this, nothing you do will ever bring me back to you." Her bravado crumbled then, her shoulders sagging as the weight of her own actions crashed down on her. She sank onto the couch, defeated, whispering, "You're making a mistake." But even she couldn't hide the truth anymore. Her threats, her tears, they weren't strength. They were weakness. As she left, slamming the door behind her, I realized something profound. She no longer had power over me. Not anymore. Building a relationship with Jessica wasn't the fairy tale I had hoped for. It was messy, raw, and at times painfully difficult. Both of us carried wounds from our pasts, invisible scars that would occasionally resurface in moments we least expected. One evening, as we sat on her couch discussing plans for the future, an argument erupted over something trivial, a disagreement about how to handle finances. What started as a calm conversation quickly escalated when Jessica, frustrated, blurted out, "Brandon never made me feel like I had to justify every little decision." The room fell silent. Her words hung there, heavy and unspoken, but their impact hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I felt like I was back at that party, shrinking under Madison's comparisons. My chest tightened, and I stood abruptly, needing space to breathe. "So I'm just another version of him now?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. Jessica froze, realizing what she had said. "Jason, no, that's not what I meant," she stammered, reaching for my hand. But I pulled away, retreating into the kitchen where I could process the wave of emotions crashing over me. How could she compare me to Brandon? Hadn't we both spent months trying to escape those shadows? After a few tense minutes, Jessica followed me. She leaned against the doorway, her expression filled with guilt and regret. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That was unfair. You're nothing like him." It took everything in me to look at her then, to see the sincerity in her eyes. "It's not just about tonight," I admitted softly. "It's about all the times I've doubted myself because of people like Madison and Brandon. I don't want to be anyone's second choice." Jessica stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You're not. I promise you, you're my first choice, Jason. And if I have to prove that every day, I will." But the challenges didn't stop there. Brandon continued to haunt Jessica's life, his presence lingering like a dark cloud. He bombarded her with calls late at night, his voice dripping with venom. "You'll regret this," he threatened. "If you don't withdraw the divorce papers, I'll take you to court and ruin you." His words weren't empty threats. He hired lawyers to intimidate her, dragging her through emotional and financial turmoil. Each call left her shaken, reminding us both that moving forward wouldn't be easy. Despite these obstacles, we found strength in each other. We talked openly about our fears, our insecurities, and the pain we still carried. Slowly, we learned to navigate the minefield of our past together. When Brandon's harassment became unbearable, I encouraged Jessica to stand firm, supporting her every step of the way. Together, we faced his attempts to control her, refusing to let fear dictate our lives. By the time Brandon finally signed the divorce papers, it felt like a victory, not just for Jessica, but for both of us. Our bond grew stronger, forged in the fire of shared struggles and mutual healing. The night of the final gathering felt like a reckoning, though I hadn't planned it that way. It was Jessica's idea for us to attend together, not as a statement, but because she believed I was ready to face whatever came my way. The venue was familiar, the same kind of upscale backyard affair where Madison had once humiliated me in front of her friends. But this time, I wasn't the man who blended into the wallpaper. I walked in with my head held high, Jessica by my side, her presence steady and grounding. We weren't there to provoke or to prove anything. We were simply two people who had found peace in each other. Madison arrived later, dressed impeccably as always, her entrance commanding attention. She scanned the room, her eyes locking onto us immediately. For a moment, she froze, clearly unprepared to see me so transformed, or perhaps unwilling to accept it. Her lips curled into a forced smile as she approached our group, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Jason," she said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "I see you're still trying to reinvent yourself. Must be exhausting pretending to be something you're not." Her words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate, designed to cut deep. But something extraordinary happened. Instead of laughter or awkward silence, Madison was met with cold stares and murmurs of disapproval. One of Jessica's friends, a woman named Claire, spoke up first. "Actually, Jason seems happier than ever. Maybe you should take notes on how to treat someone with respect." Others chimed in, their voices layered with subtle disdain. "Yeah, Madison, maybe it's time to stop living in the past," another added. Her face flushed crimson, her composure cracking under the weight of collective judgment. For the first time, Madison looked small, not just in my eyes, but in everyone else's too. She tried to recover, firing back with biting remarks, but her words fell flat, drowned out by the growing solidarity around me. Tears welled up in her eyes, her facade crumbling piece by piece. Without another word, she turned and fled the party, leaving behind a trail of pitying glances. As the door slammed shut behind her, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure, not born from triumph, but from understanding that I no longer belonged to her narrative. Jessica reached for my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. Together, we stepped outside into the cool night air, bathed in the soft glow of string lights hanging above. The world seemed quieter, lighter, as if the universe itself was celebrating our liberation. You did it, Jessica whispered, her voice filled with pride. Not just tonight, but every day leading up to this. And as we walked away, hand in hand, I realized that happiness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future strong enough to overshadow it.